some of my favorite routes are just getting up in the morning when the sun's coming up and, it's kind of shining across the bay here. And when you head down towards Portland, which is our largest city in the area, you can pretty much see the water from wherever you are there too. So it's a really nice place to ride a bike in the summer. And
Cool. Well, thank you everyone for joining me this week for another episode of Because Bikes, or how I like to say it, Talking Bikes. This week I'm joined by Eric Weinrich, former NHL player, currently still involved in the sport as a development coach for the New Jersey Devils, but has switched to bikes and racing bikes for another form of competition now. So welcome, Eric. Thanks for making time for this. So kind of want to start this off by throwing it back to when you were a kid. Do you remember any fond memories of riding bikes, or was cycling just a part of just your childhood at all?
Well, not specifically like road bikes, Parker. Obviously as a kid, like every other kid, I had a bike, and we used to set up jumps and try different stuff like that around the yard. But it was basically just a mode of transportation to get from one house to another back in the day when, families had one car and the dad or mom was going to work in that. So if we wanted to see friends, it was get there on your own. And my mode of transportation was my bike. But my dad, when we moved to a small town in Maine, he started working for an architectural firm, and one of the guys that was working with him was a bike racer. So he talked my dad into trying it, and he bought a bike and started riding his bike and back and forth to work. So that was kind of the first time I had ever even seen anything similar to a race bike and a road bike. So it was interesting. And, as time went on, I got a little more interested and started using my dad's old road bike to train on for hockey, but didn't really have any clue about, really how to use it.
Gotcha. So when was was that like when you were in your kind of middle school, high school years that you were starting to ride your dad's bike?
Yeah,
Okay.
right around then. And it was a nice old Botecchia with, it had a Campiola super record and sew up tires. And so if I ever got a flat, I was in trouble. But it was a really cool bike. I wish we would have held on to it. It'd be a pretty cool collector's bike these days. But obviously I didn't know anything about it, but just that I could use it to train on.
For sure. So then when did you start to like fall in love with cycling? So I know you fell in love with hockey, and we've had a great career from you from that. Thank you. But when did you become sort of a fan of the sport, or have you always sort of been a fan of the sport when you were riding your dad's bike, or was there like a moment in time that in your kind of from playing in college, hockey wise up till now, that you really, is there like a point in time where he was like, all right, yeah, I really like professional cycling and I want to like do this when I'm done with what I'm doing now?
Yeah, well, I think, probably my earliest memories of becoming a fan was probably when they started showing some of the tour on TV. And I can't remember exactly when that, would have been, but I think Outdoor Life Network started showing bike racing on TV, and it was interesting. And as an athlete, you always admire what other athletes do. And I was a big fan of Eric Hayden, and I know that he and his sister had done a lot with cycling for training, and they both ended up becoming bike racers as well. So he was a big hero of mine, and I kind of followed his career. And so I think, little things like that started to spark my interest more. And once I got into college and into training for the Olympic team with a buddy of mine, Mike Richter, who's been on your show before. We were both kind of fans of Eric Hayden and cycling. And so when we were at the Olympic Training Center a few times earlier in our training for Team USA, I got to see a few of the athletes at the dining hall, and I saw the guys get up, early in the morning, and they'd have all kinds of stuff on their backs, and they'd go out all day, and then I wouldn't see them again until dinner time. So it's kind of cool to, see those guys riding around town out in Colorado Springs and wondering what they're up to every day. But as time went on, I don't know, I just became a big fan of bike racing, and obviously the Lance effect played a big role in that. And I went to Paris once and got to see the finish of the tour, and just became, kind of a passion. And one year, I think probably the year that I really fell in love with it was there was a point in our career where we had a work stoppage. There was players got locked out of the season and we didn't play. And I ended up buying a pretty nice road bike, and I met these guys in town just outside of Philly where we were living. And they invited me to come ride with them. And I started going like 4 or 5 days a week just because there wasn't that much else to do. And they were going on some great rides. So the more I did it, the more I fell in love with it. And ever since then, I just couldn't, I can't get enough of it.
Gotcha. So it looks like I looked at a little bit of your results. Like you basically, like you had a spike in like 2013 with doing like 20 races that year. But what was, so that transition, it didn't seem like you, I mean, like 2004-ish is when you retired from playing roughly. And then like 2008, I see like results picking up from races. Like, was that those 4-year transition period where you're just riding all the time, and then like you decided like you felt good enough to start racing, and then you just kind of just hopped right in?
Well, there was when we ended up moving back to Maine post career, I started doing some Saturday morning rides with the group in town here, and started learning more about bikes and training, and didn't really do any racing. I just didn't feel that comfortable riding with a group of guys. But the more I did it, the more I enjoyed it. And we had some pretty competitive group rides up here. And some of the guys asked me if I wanted to, come to a race with them. And so I signed up for a couple, and, just caught the bug. And, it was just, the more I did it, the more competitive I got. And I just wanted to keep trying to upgrade and get to as many races as I could. And so I spent a lot of time in the summer just traveling around and trying to race and get some results and upgrade. And I eventually probably got as far as I ever be able to, and met a great group of guys, and we all kind of traveled around together and did races.
Fantastic. And that was, so was it the same group of guys that you did your CX season with too, or was that a separate group that you then decided? And how'd that like come about? I mean, it's like there is definitely some parallels between road racing and cyclocross racing, but they're also completely different beasts. Like, what was that like?
Well, I think the biggest change for me as a cyclist was somebody in town here who had done a lot of competitive racing and been pretty successful asked me if I had a coach, and I was like, no, I don't know. Wasn't even aware there were any, And so he introduced me to a couple guys that have a company out here in New England called Cycle Smart, and Adam Meyerson, and introduced me to a guy named Alec Donahue, and he's been my coach ever since then, and we become pretty good friends. And I just love hanging out at his house and listening to all the information he has about cycling and how he trains his athletes, and kind of the parallels of our sport and theirs. But he's been a great resource, and he's kind of the one who got me into cyclocross. He trained, some pretty elite riders in that sport, and I tried it for a few years, but I my skills were that great, and I ended up crashing a lot, and um, I got to the point now where I can't really do a lot of the skills needed to compete in cyclocross, but it was really fun when I did it, and I met some great people through that sport too.
Very cool. Is there anything that so like talking about a little bit about the coaching side of things, with your current role now with the New Jersey Devils, are you involved or using cycling at all and part of your kind of just in how you talk about training, or just kind of ways to keep athletes fit in the off season, or have you incorporated cycling at all, or just kind of being like not intentionally just sharing your knowledge from cycling to these athletes?
Sometimes, I think there's some good reference points that kind of cross over, but I think if guys really got as serious as I did, and started riding a bike every day, I kind of found that I lost weight pretty quick. And of course, in hockey, you need a lot more strength and muscle than you do in cycling in certain parts of your body. So there is definitely sport specific exercises that guys need to do in either sport, so they don't cross over as much as they used to. And guys do use stationary bikes and as part of the training, but I don't think they do as much as they did back when I was a player. But there are some guys who like to mountain bike, and a few guys have gotten road bikes just to kind of change up the scenery every once in a while. But I don't think they really incorporate it into their actual training, like maybe like a speed skater would. Or but obviously, the more time I spend with Al Donahue and learn about how he works with his athletes, and they have a lot of younger riders there, so the similarities of what the kids go through, and things that you say to them, some of the inspirational stuff that goes along with sports at that age, and just coaching in general, or I find that there's a lot of things in common between what Al preaches and what our coaches are always talking to our athletes about as well.
Gotcha. So I'm sure riding in Maine is pretty kind of nearly a good portion of the year, but you also get a lot of snow up there. So what are some of been your favorite places to ride? I mean, has that been in Maine, or was that all along the East Coast at all? Or when you were over in Paris, did you get a chance to ride at all? What are some of like your favorite places to ride?
Yeah, well, yeah, we are lucky here where I am, Parker. We live on the coast, so pretty much anywhere you want, you can have a little view of the ocean when you're riding your bike, and it's coming up, and it's kind of shining across the bay here. And when you head down towards Portland, which is our largest city in the area, you can pretty much see the water from wherever you are there too. So it's a really nice place to ride a bike in the summer. And like you said, when it gets colder here, everybody gets their skis out and does a lot of cross country, and fat biking's gotten kind of popular in the woods here. But yeah, there's some beautiful places to ride in Maine. And when I head out towards where Cycle Smart, a lot of the guys train out there in Western Mass. That's also a real beautiful place to go, and totally different, a lot hillier, but as enjoyable for sure. But and ever since I, really got into cycling, wherever we go now, I try to either rent a bike or bring my bike with me. And so if we've ever gone over to Europe or been to Ireland and Italy, went to Corsica and did some riding there. That was cool. Haven't done much in France except for one area in the Champagne region where we have some friends. But just seeing the guys come through Paris was pretty spectacular. I mean, the speed and that those guys ride is just phenomenal. And especially when you're on a bike yourself and then watching what those guys can do is always amazing. I have done a couple really cool trips with a group of guys from New Jersey. There's a kind of a New England legend, a guy named Roger Asbaum, who has a coaching company here called FinCraft, and he's been going over to Italy for, I think it's about 15 years now. So I've been over with him twice, and we kind of follow the Giro around and ride some of the route and some of the iconic climbs over there. So that's definitely probably my favorite part of the world to ride a bike in, and to follow the race around is cool. And Roger's become a really good friend, and I enjoy spending time with him too.
Fantastic. So I would imagine, I mean, you did a little cyclocross, so you have a couple bikes in your fleet. How many do you have, if you don't mind me asking? And then what's your favorite bike to ride? You have a favorite? Or
I'm down to 3 bikes now. So I have a mountain bike, and I have a Cannondale Super X that I end up riding a lot now. That I'm not really using it for cyclocross anymore, but I've kind of spec'd it out as more of a gravel bike, and I love that bike. I put on some bigger tires and pretty much ride that anywhere. But that's kind of become my favorite bike in my garage. But I also have a Specialized Tarmac that I really like a lot too. It's a really racy bike, and not that I'm doing much racing now, but it's a fun bike to ride as well. So there's plenty of bikes out there. I wish I had more, but you can only ride so many, I guess.
Totally, for sure. The same boat. You mentioned gravel a little bit. Have you dabbled in any bigger gravel events, or are there any gravel events that are on your bucket list? I know there's some really good gravel rides out in your area that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I mean, as it has in the country and everywhere in the world, I guess it's exploded here in New England, and there's a couple of really fantastic ones that I've done a couple times. The Overland up in Vermont, Overland Grand Prix was the first one I did. So I've done that a couple times, and now Ted King and his wife are putting one on in Vermont as well. And I did that one last year, and probably my favorite one that I've done was it's the longest one for sure. And so I really had a lot of fun doing that, and I ended up riding with his brother Robbie a little bit, and I've gotten to know Ted and Robbie pretty well. And Robbie moved to Portland, and he's a physician now after his cycling career. So it's always fun to be able to get on the bike with him and listen to what he said about his career. And of course, I got plenty of questions, but he's been right in the hospital all the time he's been here and working with COVID patients. So I give him a lot of credit for what he's doing. But Mike Richter and I are conspiring to do some bigger gravel events, maybe out more out west. And there's one in Iceland that is on our bucket list. So hopefully we can do those when things calm down here around the world and have a little more time. But yeah, gravel is awesome, and I think that'll probably be my extent of anything competitive, if that's what you want to call it.
Very cool. What's like, you said gravel's awesome. Is there any, like, could you just expand on that a little bit? Like, what do you like about it so much? I mean, I'm sure it's very similar to what other people have kind of talked about it being, like this new wave, this grungy a little bit of, but there's also like alternative, but yet mainstream. Like, what's it like for you?
Well, having done a little bit of cross and just, experiencing the scene there around, a cross weekend, it has the same kind of vibe, like both of the events in Vermont have, great venues, and, when the event's over, everybody just hangs out, and some people make a weekend of it. And, I kind of like that. The road scene, you end up driving in the morning and the race is over and you drive home, and it just, sometimes it seems like a little bit of a wasted day if you don't do well in the race. But for gravel, I don't think there's a lot of expectations for most of the people there. There's usually a little group at the front that are hammering away and trying to, get some glory. But I ride as hard as I can, and if I finish up there, and I'm happy with that. If I don't, and I ended up riding with some cool people, and probably meet some people that I wouldn't have otherwise. And they're usually in beautiful areas, especially up in Vermont, where most of them are here. It's just spectacular, and you barely see a car all day, which is also kind of a nice thing. And it's the best of all worlds for me. That's why I love it, I think.
Very cool. Very cool. Is there anything, kind of looking back on your riding career, is there anything that really stands out to you that, and this could be like multiple times over and over again, where like, I love riding my bike? Is that something that just comes across, like you're out for a ride and it just could be a morning ride and watching the sun come over the bay? Like, is it just like, how many times do you find yourself catching yourself like just enjoying life on a bike?
Pretty much anytime I hop on, Parker. It's I think the the one thing that I've found from I mean, I do a lot of driving and traveling with my job, and whenever I can drive, I'll throw my bike in the back, and if the weather's good enough, part of the day I'll just jump on my bike and just pedal around wherever I am. And it's a nice way to clear the head and relieve some stress, and exercise, which I never get sick of. That's one thing that I think I learned over the years, is that training was never hard for me. I really enjoyed it, and finding out what the body can do. And so whenever I go out, sometimes it's a training ride, sometimes it's just for fun, and most of the time it is now. I just I like going out there and just unplugging from electronics, and just riding my bike and looking around at nature and saying hello to people that you pass. And it's just it's a nice way to experience the surroundings. And I think that's probably what I love the most about it. Pandemic's been tough though. I haven't ridden with anybody since this has all started, and I do like riding with other people, although I do a lot of riding by myself. But it is nice to go with a couple buddies and just talk and kind of pass the time. But I'll wait until things are better, and just suck it up for now.
For sure. Well, really appreciate your time this morning. Still morning for both of us. But again, hopefully maybe I'll see you and Mike when you come out west for some good gravel. So till then, thank you.
Oh, my pleasure, Parker. It's been really fun talking about it. And I hope that time comes soon.